and gave some case studies, which I hope was a little comic humor. There was one in there particular. If you want to hear it, I'll say it again. But it was a useful presentation. I think it was enjoyable. I think every time you do attend one of those, everybody learns. So it was a good experience. And I hope as commissioners we get more invitations for input through the NMAR world. That's all of my report.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. I wanted to first take the time to thank both Mr. Lynn Carter and Mr. Perry Bryant for their hard work and service to the New Mexico Real Estate Commission and the real estate industry in New Mexico. We wish them nothing but the best in their retirement. I also want to welcome our new public commissioner, Eric Vasquez, and our newly assigned AAG, Leslie Padilla. We look forward to working with both of you. I want to cover the continuing education requirements for meeting attendance. In order to qualify for continuing education credit, you must register for the meeting, have your camera on during the meeting, attend the full meeting from the call to order until the commission enters into closed session. Continuing education credit will not be given to phone participants, individuals driving, or individuals without their camera on. We have also disabled the chat feature during our meetings, as I am not able to monitor and answer questions while roll calling and ensuring the meeting is following agenda. Many participants were answering questions, which may cause further confusion or misinformation. You will receive a course certificate for attendance if you qualify by email from our education administrator, Scott Latham, within 7 to 10 days from the meeting date. Our licensing staff would like to remind everyone that in order to obtain the property management endorsement, on your license, you will need to complete an application online. The property management endorsement application may be applied for at renewal or any time, and you will be required to upload the required course certificates for this endorsement. I know many of you have inquired about an electronic version of the rule book. I have provided the commissioners and Director Salazar a copy of that draft electronic version of the 2024 rulebook. And once I make edits requested by the commissioners and obtain approval from Director Salazar, I'll be posting that on our website where it will be available for download. And again, if you have any questions for our staff, please schedule an appointment by calling 505-476-4622. Or you can go online at rld.nm.gov, boards and commissions, and schedule it online. And regarding the compliance, I am going to refer that to Kathleen Roybal to discuss in her report. Sure. The phone number for scheduling an appointment is 505-476-4622. You're welcome. I'll now let Mr. Latham speak.
Good morning. At this time, we would just like to have the commission approve the minutes from the August 8th, 2024 meeting of the EAC and the September 6th, 2024 meeting of the EAC. You will notice on the August 8th, there was a recommendation to bring Lawrence Ashwood on the committee as a new member to one of the vacancies. And then on the September 6th, we are looking for approval of the 2025 NMREC core course.
Mr. Latham, just one quick question. Last time we approved the core courses, we actually got to see a snippet of it. I didn't see that in the packet.
At this time right now, we're just approving the outline of the course. They've got most of it laid out, and Bob Arguelles is here if you have any questions on that. They are going to begin it with issues that are affected because of the NRA settlement coming out, and that's going to be moving as we go through the process. So it's not set in stone what's going to be as far as that goes, because it's going to change as we go on, and they want to be able to update it at that time.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Scott, I have a question too. When is the next instructor boot camp?
We are still in discussions with that. I am taking names of individuals that would be interested in that and holding on till we get that put together. It will probably be sometime in the new year. We just have not settled on a time yet.
Okay, perfect. I have somebody locally who needs to do it, so.
I noticed, are we approving the minutes? Yeah, so I noticed there was a discussion in the September 6th meeting about the proctored, getting credit for proctored courses or not having it proctored.
Was actually just on the meetings, and they did decide they would recommend that they could do it without being proctored as long as there was a test issued at the end that regarded with questions regarding that particular meeting, just like they would any on-demand course where you're taking quizzes and tests at the end to verify that you were there for the entirety.
Okay, thank you. So I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes with approving the recommendations made by the committee.
So move.
President DeVlade Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith,
Yes.
Secretary Hettinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Abstain.
Madam President, the August 8th, 2024 and September 16th, 2024 EAC meeting minutes have been approved and adopted.
I'm going to pass on the Rules Committee report based on the discussion on compliance. Investigators report.
Also, I'm currently your lead investigator for the commission. Within your packet, I did provide you a copy with our current org chart within the compliance team. This is a reflection of, we have an entire team that handles complaints for over 29 different professions. I would like to elaborate on the management and supervision staff that we have for boards and commission has over 30 years of experience combined when it comes to investigating professions that we oversee. So that was included in your packet. Within your packet, I also provided a copy of a list of all of the current cases that your commission has open and we're investigating at the moment. Right now, there's a total of 120 complaints that are open that need further investigation. So we are diligently working on those cases and with hopes to get that number down quickly. Right now we have the 2 vacant positions open. One is the compliance supervisor and then an investigator for the real estate commission. Those are currently posted and hopefully will be filled soon. Does anyone have any questions?
I do have a question. Will the investigator be dedicated just to the New Mexico Real Estate Commission?
No, they will not be.
And do they have specific industry experience?
So when it comes to specific industry experience, we rely on our commissions and our boards. So when we present we may have. I do want to say that all our investigators do have the experience to investigate these matters, and again, we do rely on commission members to assist us.
So when you say that they have some kind of knowledge of investigation, where does that come from? Do they have a law enforcement background? Do they have what is their background?
So we follow the criteria that is implemented through SPO. So it just depends. It could be through education. It could be through investigative experience. Some of our staff are law enforcement, have the history of law enforcement. It just depends on who our candidates are going to be.
What are your expectations on getting through all of these cases that are here now? And when you say the complaint committee, it's just one person on the commission.
Right. So we're going to try, our goal is to tackle the complaints from the furthest date received to current. So some of the cases that are presented on this list aren't necessarily in the investigation process. Some of them may be pending like a hearing or compliance with the settlement agreement. But the ones that are needing investigation, we're working diligently with multiple staff on our team to ensure that the investigations are complete.
Is there any time limit for investigations for each case?
Every case, it varies. Some cases we're able to look at them and realize that the commission doesn't have jurisdiction, so we're not going to spend as much time on those cases.
But will you exercise administrative authority to dismiss them before they come to the commission?
No, we will not. We don't have the authority to dismiss the case. It has to be voted on in a public meeting.
Okay. Any more questions? Mm-hmm.
I have one more question for you. On this chart, this flow chart here, can you explain this a little bit to me? I mean, you have locations on it as underneath each of them. Are you separating the complaints by area, or what does this mean?
Yes, so the org chart reflects that, we have our deputy director, Kathy Ortiz, who oversees our entire team. I'm the compliance manager, and then we have a team in Albuquerque and one in Santa Fe. So that's what's reflected on the org chart. However, we all work together at any given time. Santa Fe and Albuquerque.
Well, actually, you have Las Cruces on here. You have Santa Fe on here. And I just wondered, what does that mean?
It just means that our team is spread across the state, but we all work together at any given time to ensure that our investigations are complete.
So are these positions already filled, or they're to be filled positions? What's
the current vacancies that we have are the compliance supervisor in Albuquerque and one of our investigators as well.
And so how many, so the 2 investigators that you intend on hiring will be for overall for every board, basically?
So we do have assignments, but they overlap. So if I need an investigator to look at a case because it has serious allegations, any of our investigators at any time can jump in to look into that case.
I guess the biggest concern or the question here is really after, the people that are going to be investigating these cases to have that resident background only because of, the resources that they have. I guess that's where we're coming from.
And I understand your concern. We do deal with 29 different professions, and we don't have a dentist on our staff. We don't have a chiropractor on our staff. And again, that's when we rely on our commissioners or our board members who are the professions in the industry to assist us when questions like that arise.
Mm-hmm. So shall we move into public comment? Because a lot of the questions may be repetitive. Secretary? Yeah, we'll move into public comment. I don't, we, in public comment, we don't make decisions, but maybe Ms. Roybal would be available to answer questions from the public, if that would be acceptable. I'm going to take Kirsten and then I'll have you speak. I'll have her come in first and then. Not yet.
How's that? Okay, good morning, Commissioners. My name is Kirsten Johnson, and I am here speaking to you as a former real estate commissioner. I had the distinct pleasure and honor to sit in your seats for 8 years. And it was simultaneously the scariest and hardest thing I ever did. I can't imagine anything more difficult than judging your peers. And I know that I took it very seriously, and I know that everyone on this commission takes it seriously. And I don't know if some of the new commissioners are aware of the great loss you have sustained by losing your investigators. It's a tremendous loss that you have just sustained. And the public has just sustained an equally tremendous loss. The complexity of a real estate transaction is very hard to understand on the face of it. I can remember so many times reviewing Broker B's, and at the initial pass, reading it, you thought, this is a bad thing that just happened to somebody. And then when you pulled back the layers, you realized it was not a violation at all. It just looked like a violation. And without somebody reviewing those cases who has real estate experience, this is a very, very dangerous road that we're traveling. Somebody who's investigating 29 other boards and commissions who does not have real estate experience at a deep level has the potential to not only hurt the public by misunderstanding the transaction and the subtleties of the transaction, they have the potential to damage the real estate broker as well. When I was a real estate commissioner, this came up. We fought it with all of our strength, and eventually we were replaced because RLD has a different view of what should be happening with all the boards and commissions. The Real Estate Commission is a self-supporting board. We have income. We can sustain ourselves. We can afford our own investigators. We fought to have the budget presented to us. During COVID, we finally were allowed to have the budget presented to us. We found that the Real Estate Commission had a lot of money, and we were also supporting other boards and commissions with our money. There's no reason that the Real Estate Commission should not have its own investigators who are trained. I am here to speak very seriously as someone who has had a lot of experience in this. This is not to be taken lightly. We cannot be lumped in with the other boards and commissions. The pharmacy board has to have investigators who have a PhD. You can't have people who do not have expertise in a field investigating cases that have the potential to ruin somebody's career, to take away your livelihood based on a misunderstanding of a process that you have no experience in. I am asking you to please, RLD, do not do this to our Real Estate Commission. Allow us to rehire our own investigators who are trained in real estate. This is something that goes to the very mission of the Real Estate Commission. The mission is to protect the public and to educate realtors. You cannot protect the public from people if you don't understand what you're investigating. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to speak at the microphone? Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Sandy Pasquale, realtor for the last 50 years, and this is a big shock to our real estate commission industry. And the biggest thing that I see here that is confusing to me is that when they make the commissioners the investigators, how do you keep the information confidential? So that's my question. Is there any address to that? But more so, I agree with, we're going down a slippery slope.
Mr. Arguelles?
Morning, Commissioner. Bob Arguelles from Albuquerque, New Mexico, and welcome, Commissioners, Ms. McGath and Ms. Salazar. I can't say it any better than what, certainly than what Ms. Johnson said earlier. Mine is perhaps more of a little bit of a broader concern, and it's actually something that's been going on for some time that has been frustrating. The Real Estate Commission for years and years and years has had quite a bit of autonomy, right? We had our own organization, in essence, falling under the Regulation and Licensing Division, but rather autonomous with our past Executive Secretary, Cidio, but we were able to really manage the real estate community in and of itself. And little by little, Regulation and Licensing Division has really kind of taken that, from my opinion, completely over, and really changed a lot of things that were very important and very exclusive to the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. The issue of the complaint committee, you know, we have not really had thorough discussion about that. It's come up at a meeting or two, and suddenly we're all of a sudden having a commission, a complaint committee. But I don't know that there's ever been a lot of opportunity for the Real Estate Commission, the real estate community, to have feedback on that. And every time there is feedback, even as it just was a moment ago, it's always negative feedback, because there's a clear understanding in our community of how those complaints should be handled, and they should not be handled outside of our community. I think we are in a very competitive situation. I think the reputation of a real estate professional is so significant that any word getting out outside of our community that a person is under an investigation or complaint, I think that's very detrimental to them, right? It's not something that we take lightly. And I will second what Ms. Johnson said earlier. You know, I understand that may be the way that it works for the rest of the RLD commissions and boards. When you said, Ms. Roybal, I believe, is that right? When you said that we have a cumulative experience of 30 years, that's wonderful. I can tell you, you can look around this room. We have just in this room right now, we probably have 2,000 years of cumulative experience. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, and we're not being critical of that process. I think you have to involve very significantly real estate professionals on that committee. I don't know how else you could do it. And I think in relying on the board of commissioners to guide you with that complaint, and then you're going to ask them for that. I think you need somebody with professional experience in that. The other thing that I think has happened with RLD, and again, not trying to be overly critical about it, is that we had very specific individuals in very specific positions. And it's my handling a lot of things in a lot of, and real estate commission ago, requesting information about why the real estate recovery fund, $10 per year, was reinstated on the license renewals, and I've never had an answer to that. And the reason that it was very concerning to me is that there's supposed to be a very specific fund set up, or a very specific balance set up in that fund. And to my knowledge, that it was fully funded. It should have never, and if it spills over, there's a very specific direction in which it needs to go to the education fund. And so all I'm asking, and I believe that it should be part of every real estate commission meeting, is a balance of what's in the real estate recovery fund, what's in the real estate education fund, and I think that should be part of the next meeting, and it should be public, and we should all know. Because right now, everybody paying an additional $30 for a license renewal, I think that's inappropriate, and I don't think it's needed. And certainly, if it is, then let's see the numbers. And then the last thing I would just recommend, and Commissioner DeVlieg, you and I had a little bit of a conversation about this. I was speaking to some other broker or something, actually another real estate commission, education commission in another state, North Carolina, I think. And they were, one of the topics that we got on was the Arello conference that I think is coming in October. And I don't know what your plans are, if there's any plans at all, but I would greatly encourage the NMRLD or whoever it is that needs to approve that they send at least 2 commissioners to that particular conference, particularly with the importance of the NAR ruling and how that's going to end up spilling over in some way. It's going to spill over somehow. It's not, it's going to spill over to the Real Estate Commission. And the other thing that I would also mention is, I think if we could include Mr. Latham in that, because it does deal a lot with education. And I think that those are the sorts of things that we can do as a real estate commission to enhance the professionalism of real estate brokers. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McCoy.
Good morning. Bill McCoy, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Bob, thank you for the 2,000 years experience. Although I will point out, there's only 3 of us in the room with 4-digit license numbers. If I had to guess, Mr. Pasquale, Mr. Kraft, myself. We are constituents of the RLD, whether they realize that or not. And welcome, Mr. Vasquez. I'm glad we didn't have a long vacancy on the commission. And Ms. Padilla, I hope you are the beginning of some consistency for support of the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. I will defer to all of Kirsten Johnson's comments and support them, as well as Mr. Arguelles, with the exception of the obnoxious number. But speaking to something that is very near and dear to me, and that's how do you treat your constituents? Ms. McGrath, I'm glad you're finishing up the publishing of an electronic document. Although I wonder how much editing one needs to do to the law and the rules. I think the legislature does that, or a rules hearing does that. But upcoming on the agenda is an item about the New Mexico Real Estate Commission promulgating forms. And I've had this discussion for years. And for those who doubt my veracity, this is the first document I was given by the New Mexico Real Estate Commission in the 70s. And it's the rule book. I will give you a side view so you can see how much of that has changed. But about 2/3 of the way through this document, I just want to share with you in section 16, recommended real estate forms. The following real estate forms are recommended by the Real Estate Commission for general use by New Mexico real estate agents. It is hoped that this recommendation will result in better service to the public of New Mexico by standardizing forms which could be used throughout the state, the New Mexico Real Estate Commission. This discussion is not new. In fact, it is so old, it appears new. In here, the only document missing for a broker to function at a minimal level is a buyer-broker agreement. Because buyer brokerage technically was not legal in New Mexico until 1984, according to our statute. So, Mr. Arguelles stated very clearly, the Real Estate Commission has funds. Where they go at the end of each legislative session, we were robbed by the legislature and had to change the law when they removed more money than they could legally remove from the recovery fund not that long ago. I don't have that many years left in my career, but I certainly expect the RLD to recognize their constituency. I fully expect that the Real Estate Commission will shepherd their purpose of protecting the public with knowledge of how we work. And just to kind of top off the thought about the investigators, if all we need is investigative experience of some kind, our industry will not be better protecting the public. So thank you for putting up with my passionate plea that this is one constituent who is going to watch carefully how he is treated along with his peers. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment?
Can you hear me? Hello? Yes? Lower? No, I'm good. Thanks. My name's Vicki Creel. I'm the QB with Creel & Associates, and I had requested 2 questions today. I feel a little guilty after hearing all the upheaval between the Internal Real Estate Commission and just the public perception of the changes in our industry right now that we're all fighting. But I've been looking in the rules and regulations books, and I've been coming to every commission meeting that I could in the last year and a half, and I'm very frustrated that I feel that these 2 very severe issues do not seem to be addressed. One, we have a team task that seems to have been tabled for months and months and months. I am getting extremely frustrated with getting transactions negotiated, and as soon as the signatures are on the paper, I'm being told to remove the person who was the responsible party with whom I have been dealing with, and to put down the QB and or the team lead, and then send all correspondence to the TC. I'm tired of it. I think we need to find out who is the responsible party, how we're going to deal with these teams. And I know that people want the numbers under our team lead. I understand that. I get that. But when I'm dealing with the transaction, I want the responsible party on my paperwork. And I'm not sure why that has not been addressed. I saw it a year ago and it seems to have been tabled. The second question is the accountability and responsibility for qualifying brokers. I called an organization a few months ago to pay a compliment to a broker who did a wonderful job, and they could not figure out who the QB was for this person. And when I talked to the qualifying broker, he had to look through his numbers to see if that was indeed his associate broker. That's unacceptable. And I've gone through the rules and regulations book to see what are the requirements for a qualifying broker. I am one, and my associates aren't always fond of me because I'm very demanding and I want to know what they're doing because the buck stops here and it should stop there too. And I just feel that when you have a couple hundred people under you or even 50 people under you, that's just not reasonable to expect proper supervision. There's a QB here who actually was complimented when we were talking about this that does have a large group and she does a beautiful job, but that's unusual. And I just think that both of those 2 items should somehow be put on the agenda to be addressed. And my apologies because I know we're in the middle of flux of a lot of other things that maybe take priority, but I've been waiting to talk for a few months. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Now's your chance. think we're finished with public comment. Move into old business, Secretary. Yes, I can talk about it. As previously discussed, the commission voted to have the EAC provide recommendation. The EAC provided their recommendation on the EAC August 8th meeting minutes. I think we just vote to have the, yeah, we included that in the approval of the minutes.
You don't need to re-vote on it.
Okay. So we're going to adopt the recommendations in the September meeting. The next item, amend.
I noticed on the minutes that there were 2 EAC sets of minutes, I believe. No, that was sorry, there was just one.
Yeah, that's fine. It was confusing.
Thank
yeah.
you.
The next item is amending final decision in order 2203-01-016 A, B, C, 20-01-02-002, 20-07-03-045, discussion and potential action. The commission voted to amend the hearing officer's report due to typographical error in our August 12th, 2024 special meeting. And I move to amend the final decision and order on 22-03-01-016, A, B, C, 20-01-02-002, 20-07-03-045 to reflect the amended hearing officer report. Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. McGeth, will you please call the roll?
President DeVlig-Kilman,
Yes.
Vice President Smith,
Yes.
Secretary Hettinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Abstain.
Madam President, the motion to amend the final decision and order reflect the amended hearing officer's report carries unanimously.
Thank you. We'll now discuss the new business. Complaint committee discussion and potential action. I want to place this on the agenda, open the conversation about how the commission feels the new complaint committee is working out. Our complaint committee is Mr. Smith, Commissioner Smith. He's online, so he's welcome to pitch in. Right now, what I have personally seen is that his input is invaluable. I'm not sure that it's cut the caseload very much, because we are still having to, obviously, in good practice, read all the complaints and the cases, and then we see the recommendations, but there have been times that we have not adopted a blanket recommendation. We have had questions. So I'm going to open it up for our discussion to see if we want to move forward with a complaint committee, and what kind of input we have from the complaint committee.
So, I mean, I can say I am the last person that is for a committee. I don't like committees for committees about committees. I think it gets to be too much. This hasn't helped on caseload, and I don't think that was the intention of it. Where it does help is it helps the investigators' workload. So whenever we get a complaint that is out of our jurisdiction, whenever we have our complaint committee meeting, we can make the recommendation that this is out of our jurisdiction, and it saves them on having to do further investigation unless it comes to this meeting and then, there's more questions or something on it. But that usually doesn't happen. It's usually pretty clear if it's in or out of the jurisdiction, and that's where it helps the most. On the rest of it, there's still some where we may look at it and we don't make a recommendation on it during that meeting, and they have to continue to do investigation. But where it helps the most is on the ones that are very clear out of our jurisdiction. If it's about, if it's something that we can't see, or if it's something over, commission, money commission, things like that, that we don't have any say in is where it helps the most. So, like I said, I'm anti-committee, but this one is actually beneficial. And so far, and with Lynn and Perry, it was really, really smooth and really easy. So we'll see how it is without them. But as of right now, it has been good.
Anyone else have any input?
And I know Mr. Aguirre said something in his public comment about having a professional member on the complaint committee. Just so everybody's clear, it is me and the investigators. That's all this committee is. We just review the cases, and if it's something that is a complaint, we'll either make a recommendation or I'll ask them to do further investigation. And if it's something that is out of our jurisdiction, then we recommend to the commission to dismiss it. And it's pretty basic. There's not, our meetings are fairly quick. We're not wasting a bunch of time, and I am a professional member on it.
I do have a question, Commissioner Smith. How much of the case has been reviewed by the experienced investigator before you are called in to review it?
They do. They still review it. They still get, the responses and everything from the respondents. They do still some investigative work, but they don't have to go, sometimes these cases we get will have 400 pages of things. And sometimes they went through 400 pages of something that ended up being out of our jurisdiction. And so on those situations is where it saved the most amount of time. But they do still review, and they do still do some investigation. It's just not, it may not have to be as much. And it still may end up being that much, but it just it's case by case. It really is.
All right, thank you. Any other questions?
I have a question. So I guess with the intention, the setup with the new changes, would that be the same setup that would be targeted or hoping to have the same type of relationship?
Commissioner Katnick, I couldn't hear your question. I'm sorry. Can you kind of repeat?
The question was if they intended to have the same type of relationship with the new structure that they have in place with RLD.
I also think that the intent is to have more participants involved in the complaint committee. These would be other brokers. However, we have to strongly encourage the redactment of all information prior to, because of the broker relationships within New Mexico.
Yeah, I think it would be a bad idea to have other brokers on it, just because it's going to open up, like what they were saying, what Kirsten was saying, I believe, is the judgment side of things. That's not a good idea.
Thank you.
Commissioner Smith, what in addition do you think staff can provide to help better your role? To support it, what would be ideal?
Our own investigators. Losing Lynn and Perry is going to make it a little more difficult for the complaint committee, for sure.
And that's because of industry knowledge.
100%.
Yeah, thank you.
And experience overall from being, Lynn's been here forever.
He's part of that 2,000 years of experience.
He may have bumped it to 3,000. I don't know.
I'll tell him that the next time I run into him. Any other comments? Thank you for yours. Anything else? We'll move into New Mexico Department of Justice clarification and discussion. I received public comment and confusion when I was at the NMR presentation over the Department of Justice online attendance in our previous meeting, and I've asked our AAG Leslie Padilla to clarify.
Thank you, Madam President. Leslie Padilla with the New Mexico Department of Justice. And I'll stress it's the New Mexico Department of Justice, not the United States Department of Justice. This is what you probably all remember as the New Mexico Attorney General's office. The label Department of Justice is actually in statute. When I heard that the Department of Justice or the Attorney General was now referring to the office as the Department of Justice, I too was I questioned that, but I looked at statute. It's actually in New Mexico statute that the New Mexico Attorney General is head of the New Mexico Department of Justice. So Attorney General Torres decided to call the Department of Justice just that. I would, hopefully when I log in online, I will note that I'm New Mexico Department of Justice, so there's no confusion between the U.S. Department of Justice. But I think anyone who's been in your meetings from my office has been with the New Mexico Department of Justice. So it's just a matter of rebranding and making clear that the Attorney General is responsible for the overall Department of Justice, which includes the office that I work for, which is the Government Counsel and Accountability Division. We provide support and legal counsel to a number of different boards and commissions that don't have their own legal counsel.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for? Okay, thank you. Is notice of compliance still on the agenda?
I believe we put this in open session. It's also in closed session. In the event the respondent wanted to comment, I don't know if the respondent's here.
Notice of noncompliance, REC 2023-00284-COM was placed on the agenda both in open and closed session. If the attendee is not here, we move to the next agenda item.
Gabe, would they be able to unmute themselves if they were virtual? If the attendee is on the call, can you please raise hand so we know how to unmute you so you can speak? And again, this is an opportunity for the respondent on REC-2023-00284-COM to speak if you're available. Compliance, do we know if they were planning to attend?
All right, thank you. Next item. The commission wanted to research the authority and potential of promulgating forms. We have asked AAG Leslie Padilla to provide guidance on this.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm very interested in seeing that old rule book that one of your members had earlier, because in my research of this issue, and as I understand it, the question was, can the Real Estate Commission promulgate real estate forms to be used, I think, in real estate transactions, correct?
Yes.
That's correct. That presently, the state association provides the forms, but only to realtors.
I did look at the current statutes and current rules. That's why I'm curious to see that old rule book, because based on the current statutes, I don't see that the Real Estate Commission has the statutory authority to develop forms. The Real Estate Commission's statutory role is limited to, it's not limited, obviously you have a lot of work on your plate, but it's around licensing, continuing education of your members, of licensees. I did notice, though, you have a statutory authority over professional liability insurance, I believe. So that appears to have been added at some point, which kind of suggests to me that the legislature, as they pass laws related to real estate, may look to the Real Estate Commission as maybe what they would assume is the logical place to give the commission more authority. Right now, however, there is nothing on the books, as far as I can tell, about real estate forms, whether it's related to the Real Estate Commission or otherwise. I did look at your neighboring state, Texas, just to see what the Texas Real Estate Commission does. They do promulgate forms, I believe, for statewide use of licensees, but they do so with very specific statutory authority. I fairly easily found the Texas statute that requires, or I should say allows, the Texas Real Estate Commission to adopt forms that have been developed by a certain committee. I'm not sure if that committee is a committee of the Real Estate Commission or if it's a committee of private realtors. So I do think in order to, if the commission were interested in promulgating forms for its members, there would need to be legislative action. I would also note that right now, the Regulation and Licensing Department does act, I believe, primarily as to most of its boards in that licensing and disciplinary function. So if the commission were to want to take on the promulgation of forms, I think there might need to be some discussion of whether the commission has the expertise and staffing to support that kind of work.
That's interesting. Thank you. Any other discussion? I think this is an interesting topic that we're going to continue to discuss. And you brought up some points I hadn't thought about, like who gets to oversee legal issues regarding using a promulgated form versus the state association forms, and copyright, and a lot of other things. I was on the forms committee for 8 years, so I know the process going into that, and it's a complicated process.
Madam President, you remind me of one other thing I saw in my statutory research. There's also a provision in the current statute that says that nothing that the Real Estate Commission does shall, and I forget the exact wording, shall interfere with any local body. So if there are any municipal governments, for example, that do regulate real estate transactions, and I'm not sure that there are, but there is that statutory provision that prevents that conflict between what this commission does and what any local jurisdiction might do.
That's a lot to unpack. Thank you. Any other questions? I think this is worth a lot of discussion. Thank you. It's now time for the commission to move to closed session for the purpose of discussing the disciplinary matters listed on the agenda. All brokers attending for continuing education credit may log off, and you will not receive credit for closed session portions. Secretary Hediga.
I move the Real Estate Commission enter closed session to discuss the items listed on the agenda as authorized by the licensing and administrative adjudication exceptions of the Open Meetings Act, NMSA 10-15-1, H, 1, 3, and 7, authorizing closed session for matters related to issuance, suspension, renewal, or revocation of a license. Do I have a second?
Commissioner Katnack,
Yes.
Vice President Smith,
Yes.
Secretary Hettinga,
Yes.
Commissioner Vasquez.
Yes.
The motion passed by unanimous approval.
Let the record show the commission entered into closed session at 10:08 a.m. We are off the record. Ms. McGeth, please stop the recording.